Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome y'all to the PASS Excel Business Intelligence virtual chapter. Before we get started with Ginger, we're going to go through some slides from PASS. The first one is there's a business analytics conference going on in San Jose, California, May 2nd through the 4th. You can get more information by going to the PASS website. Also, if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's, I think, a $100 discount code, BAVCEX. And if that one doesn't work, please email us. And our email address should be on the website for our virtual chapter. And email us, and I can make sure you get the correct discount code if you go in there to get a discount on this wonderful conference. The Monday is pre-conference sessions. Tuesday and Wednesday are the probably 60-minute and 120-minute different types of sessions, even labs. And if you're into Power BI, Excel, big data, predictive analytics, data visualization, you'll surely want to attend this conference. Your speaker today, Ginger, is speaking at this conference about implementing successful data analytics management practices. Also, in about 2 weeks, there's a 24 hours of PASS. It's Thursday, February 25th. There's 6 sessions, not the normal 24 sessions, about an introduction to the PASS BA conference. They're starting at 11 a.m. Eastern, and you can go to that link below there or go to the SQLpass.org site for more information. There are many, many virtual chapters. There's actually another virtual chapter going on right as we are as well. All these sessions are recorded, usually put on YouTube where you can listen later on. So if Excel BI is not your thing and you're relating some other type of data technology, there's bound to be a virtual chapter for you in this list. Also, virtual chapter meetings go on. There's anywhere from 5 to 12 a week. You can see ours is listed there and some of the past ones. We have SQL Saturdays going around all around the country and even internationally. These are free events on Saturdays where you can see speakers like Ginger and myself and many, many others, all for free. We do it to spread the love for SQL Server and data technologies. Upcoming is Albuquerque, Tampa, Chicago, Boston, Richmond, as well as some in the international realm. Of course, PASS is a volunteer organization, so if you want to get involved with the PASS community, which is what I have done, and it's been a wonderful 5 or 6 years of enjoying meeting a lot of different types of people like Ginger, and you could do different things even during the summit, which is in, I believe, October of this year. And the membership is free to PASS. There's a LinkedIn, Facebook, even a Twitter account, but basically you go to SQLpass.org and you log in there and you get all the good information. Very seldom do you get spam email from them, maybe a couple advertisements a year, but mainly it's content about Microsoft data technology. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this show over to Ginger and she can get started.
Let's see.
All right, you're on, Ginger.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Now we can. Good.
Great. Thanks so much. So today we're going to be talking about Excel 2016. What's new? What's deprecated? What's been renamed? I know that it came out in September 2015, but this week is actually the week that Microsoft is releasing it to all their customers. If you got it like I did on the 22nd, they called that the early release crowd. So it's coming out this week for everybody who's not an early release crowd and part of Office 365. And hopefully you find this helpful in either talking somebody into buying it for you or any problems that you might have, because I came up on some that hopefully I can tell you about to keep you from coming into the same problems. A little bit about me. I blog way too much. Desert Isle SQL. It's the best way to get a hold of me if you've got any questions after this. I do blog quite a bit, a lot of Power BI, some Excel at Desert Isle SQL, so I will have an updated post for about this session, so go ahead and check that out sometime soon. I'm a Microsoft VTSP, and I'm a member of Power BI Advisors for Microsoft and also a member of the Power BI survey team. So my interest in Excel is rounded to how it impacts and relates with Power BI and data tools. I play in Excel, but don't consider myself the hardcore type of people that I'm friends with over at Excel TV, because they get into some great macros, and none of that I do. So we'll be talking about the data aspects of it today. All right, so new themes for all of the stuff that is being modified in Excel. In a word, this is a lot of this is marketing. There's just taking the word power out of it. You know, power user was like the coolest thing ever, and so they threw the word power in every single thing that they did. Power view, power map, you know, power pivot, you know, enough, less power now. Of course, renaming all this stuff means that it's going to be so much fun to go search for problems later, because if you look up Power Query and it's not called Power Query anymore, well, now you got to look at two places. But hey, it's a marketing thing, and they're trying to fix it, although you and I might have some interesting discussions about what we think of changing things after the fact. But another thing that they've added is instant analysis. The idea being is that they're trying to provide analysis for people who are using Excel, so they have things that are pre-baked, so they don't have to do as much work. And this is more on the Power BI thing. They're trying to make it easier to distribute it, and by that, generally speaking, we're talking about distributing it to Power BI. And also, one thing to remember is this is the first release of Excel where Power BI is totally separate. So they're trying to differentiate Excel with Power BI so that they're not the same thing anymore. And try to make the two different products, because, you know, before they were joining them everything together. But the business analysis features that they added, of course, will still be in there. They're not really taking anything away, and I will show you how that is. The other thing they're trying to do is they're trying to make it easy. I know a lot of people find Excel really intimidating because there's so many things you can do with it. And if you've been to some people's sites, you know, what they have been able to do it is just amazing. What people can do with Excel never ceases to boggle the mind. But they're trying to make it information available easy, so that if you can't find things or you're just learning, it's easier for you to do that. So what kind of stuff did Microsoft put in there anyway? Well, the one thing that you will hear the most about is visualizations. What they did is added all of the types of reporting that you can do in Power BI into Excel. So you can now do tree view and, you know, box charts and various things like donut charts. All of those are added in there, so you've got a lot more options now. One of the things that was in Power BI back when it was in the Office 365 thing is the forecasting and quick analysis. I really like this feature because it allows you to extrapolate over time, similar to how this is almost the exact functionality that was included in Power BI Online, where it basically forecasts trends into the future. It's one of those things that's kind of the reverse of what they tell you with stocks. If you've ever looked at a stock, they always mention past performance is not any indication of future performance. Well, that's not really true. Let's face it. I can tell you that there's going to be really big lines in Walmart the day after Thanksgiving. Well, that just means I'm awake and know when Christmas is. So some of these trends are cyclical and do happen all the time. So if you can kind of predict what your numbers will be, then people will have a better gauge if, well, that went way up. Yeah, we expected that, but it didn't go up as much as it generally does. You know, that kind of a trend, and looking at patterns over time where people may have not analyzed them necessarily. We'll look at the renamed features and the natural language help that Microsoft added in to try to make it easier to understand. All right, here's some rename examples for you so that you can remember this when you go look them up, because they will be different. They are the exact same thing, kind of like my spot picture. They're not any different. They just felt like renaming them. Sorry if it made you confused. I know I got confused when I was looking at some of this stuff too. So Power Query, that is now called Get and Transform. Power Map is now 3D Map, and calculated fields are now measures. Pretty straightforward. So let's just stop talking and actually go take a look at it. And I am opening up Excel here. All right, you'll notice it does not look wildly different from what you were using in 2013, kind of the same square look and feel that was there before. Oops, sorry about that. Bring that back. So one of the things that you'll notice is if you go start looking at the various tabs, so we'll go ahead and look at the Insert tab, you'll notice that they moved some things around and added some things as well. This is like one of my least favorite things that they added. Obviously, pivot tables, we know what those are. Recommended pivot tables, this is basically telling you what that you could, or advising you how you could create pivot tables given your existing data. This is basically if you wanted to make your data into a table. Illustrations, that's pretty obvious. Add-ins, though, this is kind of different because these aren't necessarily the add-ins that you might be thinking that necessarily are included in Excel, excuse me. So the add-ins basically will let you to manage other add-ins, and if you do that, it will pop you back into the same window that you would get if you went to File, Options, and then add-ins. It's the same place. You'll find that there are now 3 places to get to this one screen. Doesn't necessarily make any sense, but hey, they wanted to make sure you could find it, so they put it everywhere. All right. The store is where you can browse for various add-ins that are available in Microsoft's Azure space. Some of these are free and will give you various and different visualizations. One of the add-ins that I always add, and you'll notice I do have an add-in here, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for these guys because it's a great tool, is DAX Studio. And if you write a lot of DAX, this is a really good add-in to get because it allows you to better connect and run your DAX, create DAX code because it makes it much easier to find. Great tool. So it's an add-in that I went ahead and added here. All right, so if you go into, you also notice that they add the ability to add Bing Maps into your reports, which is kind of a neat deal, and adding a people graph. One of the things that you do get this trust thing, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. I really hate the fact that you have to keep on telling it that you trust it all the time. But when you do, it will create a little people icon or visualization for you so that you can use the various visualizations for numbers, put in numbers, and you get how many peoples. So kind of a fun thing there. Go ahead and make it go away though. All right, under your charts, you'll notice there are a whole lot more. Oops, sorry. We've got waterfall charts here. We've got combo charts. Underneath pie, we also now have donut charts. And 3D map, this is what used to be called Power Map, the rename of that. You'll notice though that if you start playing around with it, that this is where Power View used to be, and it's not here. It's all the way over here. Well, actually, I'll show you why it's over there and actually work on putting it in for you so it automatically shows up, because it will not necessarily be there unless you do some things to it. You'll also notice that nowhere up here is there Power Query. Well, that's interesting. What if you want to do Power Query? Well, don't relax. That is, of course, still there. They just kind of tweaked where it is. We'll go ahead and find out where Power Query went to. Oops. By going back to the Data tab here, which is where it lives now. So you'll notice this Get and Transform. This is the former name for Power Query. So this is where all of your Power Query functionality is. Microsoft used to have a separate tab, but then they had data over here, and all of that was confusing, so they put it all together. So all the functions for Power Query are listed now here. You'll also notice in Data Tools, there's Manage Data Model. Yes, this is Power Pivot, and if we go look, that's exactly what we have over here. They've just added the tab all over the place because they have found that people find it hard to find things. Now, one of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to modify their help to make it easier to actually figure out what you want to get to or what you want to do. So let's say that you wanted to do, if you wanted to try, if I want to do Power Query, And it will ask me to get help or do a smart lookup, and that should give me the insight of, yeah, it gives me this warning here. It'll tell me explore from Wikipedia, tell me Power Pivot, and then tell me that I can download it. Now, this isn't the most great example of this, but their idea being is their real language thing will get you insights for anything that you want at any given point in time. So the next thing you'll have here is what if analysis. This will have help you analyze your data by doing some pre-baked analysis on it. The forecast sheet, that's where we can go ahead and predict the trends like I was showing you earlier. And if we go to the, these tabs are rather the same. If we go over to the developer tab, we say, yes, here's another place to look at add-ins. Once again, the COM add-ins, these are of course the ones that are used for Power, your previous Power applications are still called that within the COM add-ins. I guess nobody got around to telling the naming committee that they needed to go ahead and change them because they didn't. So it's still called Power Map, Power Pivot, and Power View. And if, like me, you had these turned on when 2013, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to go in and turn them on again. They will be wiped out when you do a new install of go from 2013 to 2016. I will also say that you may not see some of these, and if you do, there's no going to Microsoft and downloading them. It's you get them or you don't. And if you're thinking, well, I don't know why I wouldn't get them, I'll get into that later on, because there are times you will not see Power Pivot or Power View. And you may wonder, well, what can I do to fix that? And I'll go ahead and show you how. So you do need to make sure these are checked so that the Power Pivot tab will be available for you, and Power View will be available for you, and the map as well. And if you just unselect these, of course, they will go away. And oh, by the way, it's good to remember these because, of course, we know that all of our stuff is perfect and none of it ever crashes. But there are times when these things do get deselected. So if all of a sudden Power Pivot went away because you got some weird error, what I recommend doing, because it generally resolves the issue, is when you get that error, go into COM add-ins and deselect everything. And then go ahead and say, okay, when I do, all my stuff will go away. Exit out of Excel, go back into it and check it, and then you shouldn't have any problems. So I can do that by going to this developer tab here and going in doing this. I'm not going to do the step that I recommend if it blows up, which is basically getting out of Excel and going back into it, but that is what you need to do. So if I go ahead and do that, my Power Pivot tab will still be here. Here's my add-ins for DAX Studio. And this is where we go ahead and go into Power Pivot. We also notice that Microsoft did another rename here. This is now a measure. It was called calculated fields before. Now they're calling it measures because that's what it's called in tabular, I'm guessing. So they're just being consistent. So this is pretty much the same thing. All right, so I went and go ahead and talked about some of the new stuff here in Excel. So back to looking at what's not there. Okay, Power View is considered deprecated, which is why you have to add it, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. But it is not considered part of Excel anymore. If you go to Microsoft's website, they will say that the reason that Power View is not considered part of the functionality for Excel anymore is you can do all that stuff in Power BI, so why would you want to do it in Excel? Well, because you want to. You can still do it. They're hiding it and making it a little bit different. Also, for those people who are used to publishing all of their reports, especially if you've got Power View reports, because they render wonderfully in SharePoint using a Power Pivot Gallery, that's gone away too with SharePoint 2016. Now, it didn't really go away, but the way that it works now is a little bit more complicated and requires more software. So within SharePoint 2016, the Excel services are removed. So if you need to use them, all of the Office services are on the Office Online server, and that's if where you need to set up to render any Excel reports that you generate. So it's another application that you have to have in addition to SharePoint. So to keep that in mind if you are also looking at upgrading your SharePoint server as well, because the way that your users will be the way that you need to configure it and the way that your users will be accessing it will of course then be different. All right. So the next thing that you've got to talk about is the new chart types. Recently, I was at a client where we were doing a whole bunch of stuff with Power BI, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've used the waterfall charts, and I went and read all about how to use the waterfall charts in Excel because they had a much better write-up. Well, it works better in Excel than it does in Power BI because when you are in Excel, you can start with a number that is greater than 0, and this is commonly referred to as what's called a walk. So you start with revenue, you decrease your negative values, and see what's comprised of them, and then you get your net income. So you can start with a big number, take away your cost of goods, add in your gross margin, subtract your administration, and you end up at this number. By the way, I really wish that Power BI would work this way. This is how it should work. It doesn't work like that. The new chart types that were added were tree view, sunburst, donuts, box charts, histogram, funnel charts, and combo charts. Unfortunately, right now there is, if you use the add-ins, you can also add additional kinds of visualizations in as well. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up my charts here. All right, so I've got a spreadsheet here, and I want to show you how to do this. So I'm actually going to take this out. I'm going to do this really quickly because I want to show you how to do it, and I forgot that I left it turned on, so it's going to make for a really bad demo. So I'm going to take it off here, and we'll go ahead and put it back on. So I'm going to go ahead and say, get rid of it. All right. So if we look at, oops, sorry, wrong one. And I'll go ahead and say save so it turns it off. I want to go ahead and look at our charts. So all right. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, where'd all my data go? Okay. So here we've got some sample data that we can play with for charts. And we're just going to do the standard way that most people would create charts within Excel, which is a little bit different than what you might do, say, in Power BI. So if you've got some data up here and you want to create a chart out of this, if we just go to Insert, we can go ahead and highlight our data and create a chart right here. And we can go with our recommendation here. And our recommendation will show us how they will visually look. So we can go ahead and pick something like this. This is called a Pareto chart. So you can kind of see, you know, what they were, the actuals. Oops, I don't want grand total, so I'm going to change that there. I don't want the total because it's treating it like a number. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again. Insert, recommended charts. And notice now that I took the grand total out of it, it's giving me a different list of charts, and including it's not giving me the Pareto. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this. No, I'm not liking that one. I'll go with the one at the top, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So this shows very easily, you know, what we have for the difference between actual and budget. It's a relatively straightforward chart that we could go ahead and create, but we can change colors. Unfortunately, they did not do what they did in Power BI and make it really easy to do any color you want. So you end up with your new setting of colors. And it is what it is. If you really want fun colors, then you should probably change things. So if we can change it to different type of charts. This gives us all of the ones in here, so we could say make this a sunburst chart, or we could change this to the tree map which is getting to be one of the more popular charts so that you can see all of the category percentages. So we're going to call this one categories. All right. So what I can also do is I can go ahead and format this and give it various options. Notice it's got no labels on it, and I can go ahead and change that so that the labels are inside. And I also have the ability to change some of the formatting for this as well, which this isn't something that you commonly do with this type of chart. So you could do a pattern fill if you wanted to, if you're planning on doing it, but that doesn't tend to work out, so we'll go back with the automatic. All right, so let's take a look at doing another kind of chart here. So we've got taken the operational information and created differences here. And this really lends itself to a waterfall chart. So I'm going to highlight that, go back to Insert, and see if it recommends a waterfall for me. It does. Great, because I was going to pick one anyway. We'll go ahead and look at the waterfall chart that we created here. And I can go ahead and put that here. And this still shows you, basically, where we are as the totals and how everything is part of the total. And it's taking the negative value here. And notice it's automatically turning on the numbers so that you see them for each value. If you don't like that, go to Format Charts here. And we can change it so it doesn't have it. So we're going to keep it though. And we are going to call this expense analysis. Now, call me a creature of habit, but this isn't generally speaking the way I do reports, because I've been using Power View for a while and I like the way the look and feel of Power View works. But you'll notice I don't really have a good way of doing that because I don't have the ability to put it. Oops, I do, because I'd have it here. So I'm going to go show you how to add this insert a Power View report like I have here, because if you don't take the steps to do what I'm telling you to do, you won't have it and you won't be able to create Power View reports, which would just be terrible. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Options. And then the next thing that I want to do is I want to customize a ribbon. And what I think is kind of funny is if you look for Power View, you won't find it because it tells you popular commands. Well, you don't want popular commands. You want the ones that are not there. And I took this one out so the Power Pivot wouldn't show up. Let me go ahead and make sure that's removed because it won't. If it's not there, you won't see it. So the ones that are not there, you will see Insert a Power View report. So that's what you're going to want to do. Now, you can do a number of things here. Probably what you want to do is you want to put a grouping, and like I have here, and put it inside of it. If you do not want to do that, oops, that Power Pivot. If you do not want to do that, though, I'm going to go ahead and remove this just so I can show you. There's a number of ways that you can do it. If I go ahead and did what I just did to remove it, this is what you'll generally see when you go into Excel. It's just not there. So we'll want to go ahead and put it back. So going back to Options, and Quick Access Toolbar. And we want to go for all documents, which is the default, and we want to look at, Customize Ribbon. And we want to go ahead and put it where we want it. Now, we could put it anywhere. If you want it to be in Home, that's fine. If you want it to be where all the other reporting things are, then you can just go ahead and put it here, or you could add it into another area. You could put it wherever you want. If you wish to create a grouping, you would do that by clicking on this button down here and saying New Group and calling it Power View. Unfortunately, they have these really cool symbols, but you tend not to see them. So I'm going to pick something like, this little doghouse, because that's where it is now. But I'm not going to necessarily see it, unfortunately, which is too bad. And then what I need to do is once I've added this group, I don't have anything in it. So if I go ahead and say OK and get out, you'll notice that I don't have anything, probably because also I failed to check it. Oops. Customize ribbon. Yeah, there's nothing here, so I don't see anything. So that's not going to be very helpful. So what I want to do is I want to go to commands not in the ribbon, and then I want to insert a Power View report, and I'm going to go ahead and add that, and that will show up underneath Power View. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and now we'll see it down here. Notice no little doghouse, so I don't know why they have me click an icon if you can't see it. So what I want to do is I want to create a Power View report. Well, generally speaking, when you are creating a Power View report, you need to tell it what data you want it to have. So we'll go ahead and highlight this data and then click on Insert a Power View report, which it will do using the data that we've selected. And I've been playing around with this. This is why it's default named as Power View 3. Generally speaking, it would download to Power View 1. All right, you'll notice you have this little design window, which is just how Power View would look before. And I can go ahead and take my data here and visualize it within Power View. And I can make a tile out of it, where I can see how they are viewed in this fashion. I don't have much data, so that's not terribly helpful. I'm going to go ahead and change this back to select the whole table. Or I could do this. This is kind of fun. So I can create a Power View visualization here. Now, one thing that happens when you are creating or I can go ahead and do my actual and budget and categories and create a, come on, there we go, create a chart. I have this bad habit of ninja clicking, which is clicking very quickly because it doesn't happen as quickly as I want it to. Now, one thing about every time that you create a Power View report, what Power View does is actually inserts data into Power Pivot. So if we go into Power Pivot and say Manage, we will notice that the data that we added into Power View is added into Power Pivot just like it always is now. That functionality didn't change in any way, shape, or form. So now we've got our Power View report as well, and we can go ahead and call this, budget actual. And one of the reasons that I wanted to go ahead and create this report is I'm going to be doing something with it later on, so I want to go ahead and keep it. So I'm going to just do File, Save As, and it's in my OneDrive folder, which is that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and save it. All right. The next thing that we are going to go ahead and do is look at improvements that have been made to Power Pivot. They didn't leave it alone either. It's got a number of different improvements in the way that it works now. One of the things that it can do is improve the relationship modeling. If you ever kind of wondered which was the one and which was the many in Power Pivot, you don't have to wonder anymore because they fixed it. It does not have the full types of relationship creation that are available in Power BI, but hey, at least you can see more of how the data is related. One of the things that it can now do, which is really, really great if you are using Power Pivot to do data modeling. By the way, if you are using Power BI, I highly recommend that you do your data modeling in Excel and import it over, because Power BI right now does not have the ability to mark a date as a date table, which means that in Power BI you can't do like your date calculations. I've got a blog post on that if you want more information, but I generally use Excel and Power Pivot for my relational modeling with Power BI for that reason. So it's a really good tool that I still use even though I could do it in Power BI. So one thing you can do though is you can auto create a date table. Now it's a great little date table. It might not be what you would create yourself, but hey, it does what you need it to do. And one thing that it also does is trying to help you out by doing some of the work for you. So it will automatically recognize where hierarchies should exist and create them for you. Awesome. And this is really great if you're just starting out and you don't even know what a hierarchy is or you forgot to do it. The other Power Pivot improvements that they have made is, and I used to run into this one all the time, they've finally gotten smart so that if you've ever in 2013 you were looking to rename a table or a column and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that because all of my DAX will break after this, fear not, they fix that. So if you say have a table called date and you're like, I really want to call that order date, but I've got all this DAX created, no problem, go right ahead. It will automatically correct all of your code. Same with columns and nested calculations. So you can change your mind on renaming and it'll automatically apply the names everywhere where it needs to, which is a great feature. I'm so glad they finally did that. About time. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if I go here to my demo report here, I'm going to go ahead and size this a little bit differently because my monitor is chopping off the top and I don't want it to do that, just like it just did. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go into Power Pivot. And this looks like a blank report, but it's the Power Pivot trick. It looks empty, but it's not. So I'm going to go into Manage, and I'll see my data here when it feels like it. And I took my data from the ever popular AdventureWorks so that you too can do this at home. You'll notice it looks a little bit different. They're put these dark lines so that it's easier for people to see. I think this is astigmatism friendly, so if you've got a problem with that, it looks rather the same. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and look at our diagram view for this. And when we do, we'll notice that we don't have a date table because I deleted it. And we'll see our little arrows though. So you can see that the geography table is a one-to-many relationship within customer. Customer is a one-to-many relationship with internet sales. Unfortunately, it's not like Power BI in that you can't necessarily change edit various relationship types, but you can double-click on it and see them at all times just like you could before. That's not really a change. So what we want to do here, though, is it's obvious if for people who are familiar with AdventureWorks or anybody who's done any modeling for a data warehouse that we don't have a date table. We need one. So instead of going and creating one, we can just go to the Design tab here, and then we say date table. Yeah, I'd like one, thank you. And you say new, and it's pasting a new table. Chug, 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 chug. And we are going to get a new date table. Ta-da! Here it is. Okay, so it's not the most elegant looking hugest date table in the world, but hey, it does what you need, and oh look, it automatically created a date hierarchy for us. Now we all, if you don't remember how to do this, you can always create a hierarchy by clicking on the hierarchy icon here and creating one by dragging things down, but you don't need to because they already did it for us and they've got year, month, and day. You'll notice I said this isn't the best model, perhaps, date in the world. It doesn't have quarter. Well, I've been to a lot of places that don't use it either. So let's go with the actual data that we got here. Because I want to take a look at the data before I determine where I want to join it, because generally speaking, I want to use my date key here. So I'm going to go back to Home and do a data view lookup here. And I'll see that calendar, yeah, it doesn't have my key that I would use, say, in internet sales. because I'm using date keys here, but that's okay because I also have real dates way over here. So I can just go ahead and join to my order date, due date, and ship date here. One thing to remember if you haven't played much with either Tabular or Excel, it doesn't handle role-playing dimensions, which means that you can't, if you want to take your one date table and hook it up here 3 times, you will need to write some DAX to make that work, because it won't work automatically until you do. So I'm going to go ahead and join my date table that I just created to my order date here. I'm just going to create this relationship like this. So now this will allow me to go ahead and do date math, and it's green because I just created it. So if I click, so I can take a look at it, and it'll show me my hierarchy here. And I don't want to edit it, so I'm just going to go ahead and close it. One thing too to remember, I know I would always have this problem when I was doing this because half the times I'd forget. Notice this didn't, now not green anymore. I would forget, oh yeah, I want to mark that as a date table, and I would remember when my calculations didn't work. Ooh, it automatically does it for us. Yay! So we've got that automatically created for us. We no longer need to create that. So, and we've got a date table that we can use. You can make it fancier, include more stuff, but at least now you've got a place to go to start out. Let's just go ahead and take a, create a pivot table out of this here too, because we can. And we'll just do it here on our existing worksheet. So you can take a look at the fact that now it's gray, so this is obviously wildly different. And I'm going to go ahead to calendar, and I want to put my date hierarchy here in my rows. And yes, it does have a whole lot of dates that I don't care about, but that's okay. Because if I go to internet sales here, and I look at my sales amount, put that as a value, it only picks the values for which I have data. And notice it's smart enough to sort things appropriately. April is not first. That's automatically done for you. If you've created your own date table, you may remember that you have to set this up so that it goes January and not April, August, because it does it in alphabetical order. It's the date table it creates automatically does that for you, which is really, really nice. And again, we can go ahead and create a pivot chart based on this. Say, and do something different, and it tells me that I can't do it for pivot table data, so that I could have to pick something else. Well, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and do a line chart. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And this has the same exact thing, even with my date hierarchy. In this case, I probably want to remove this and instead just pick year, because that'll graph better. So I can go ahead and do that in a pretty standard way. The other thing that you can, that I wanted to make to your attention, that data is pretty clean, but what it can also do is it'll detect relationships for you. So if you've got if you don't have them defined, it will automatically define them for you. But my data is pretty clean, so I didn't really have a chance to demo that information. All right, another thing that I did want to show you here, oops, sorry, is going back to insert, is one of the things that you can create is a slicer, and they changed the slicers and made them cool. So I want to go ahead and do it based on my date hierarchy. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And look, it automatically does all 3 of them for me, because I asked for all 3, which is kind of a neat thing for automatically them to do that. And the one thing that they changed here is the ability to do the multi-select. Now, I realize it's not terribly difficult to hold down the control key, but frankly, it annoyed some people. So if you go ahead and pick this multi-select button, it will automatically do it for you. It's also defaulting here to everything on this page. You can change your slicer so that it does just one thing, but generally speaking, you want everything here. So if you want to turn that off, now it is not on multi-select, so then if I select 1 year, it'll select 1 year. And if I don't want to turn it all off, I'll go ahead and click on this, and all my highlighting will be gone. Notice all of the other options that are available in my date are below it. All right, so it's a little bit of change in that they have slicers. I really like the fact that they did that, because believe it or not, it was was a big issue. All right, so next thing I wanted to talk about is data distribution. One of the things that they added kind of recently that's pretty cool is publishing directly from a dashboard into Power BI. Yeah, they separated it, but not really. So you can still do that in Power BI. And your other option, of course, if you're trying to distribute your reports, is publish them using the Office Online Server. I don't happen to have one of those, so I'm going to do Power BI. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. This blew up on me. Thank you very little. Go ahead and delete all that. All right. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to show you what I'm going to be doing here. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and publish a report to Power BI. Now, this is kind of tricky because they do want for Power BI for things to automatically be updated, it does need to be saved into the OneDrive. So you can either save it to your OneDrive or open it in OneDrive. Either way, I'm just going to go ahead and open this one. And it's going to tell me that it wants to open in Excel, which is fine because that's what I wanted to do. Since my other one blew up, I'm going to go ahead and do this as well. And it's opening my sheet. Hold on one moment. All right, so it tells me that it opened as read-only. So I'm going to go ahead and say edit. And I have this blank one here. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because there's nothing there. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and this is going to save into my OneDrive. I, of course, have a Power BI account. Of course, this isn't going to work very well if you don't have one. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to publish this to Power BI. So there's a little, go into File. I see my little icon here that says Publish. And this does happen to work better if you are already logged into Power BI, which I am. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go there. And it's going to go ahead and publish it here. Oops, excuse me, it's going to actually prompt me. All right, so this is my report that I just created. Notice it's the one that's got Power View 2 here, and it's got my data over here. I thought I had data over here. Yeah, it does, just had to wait for it. Anyway, I want to pick my pretty visualization and I want to pin it to a dashboard. So I want to go ahead and pin this visualization. So I'm going to go ahead and say pin, and it's going to say, where do you want to put this? Well, what the heck, I'm just going to put it to a new dashboard, and I'm going to call it Excel BC. And I'm going to say use destination theme. Sure, pin it. And if I do that, and I go ahead and open up this section here of Power BI, sorry. Oh, come on. Here we go. Expand everything up for me. You'll see that I have my Excel BIVC, and here we go. I have my report published here. One thing about Excel is if you save it to a OneDrive and edit it, it will be your changes will be automatically made here, and you can make sure that's happening all from within Excel. So kind of a neat trick integrating the two, even though they're also trying to separate them. So that's pretty much what I had time to demo for you everything today, but there is one thing that I think is really important that you need to know. You can't always use Power Pivot. This is actually kind of a big deal because a lot of people are thinking, oh, what do you mean I can't use Power Pivot? How does commit shows up? How come I go to add-ins and I don't see anything? If you don't have the right license, it won't be there. Power Pivot is restricted to certain versions. And oh, by the way, looky here. If you've got Office Enterprise E1, you cannot use Power Pivot. It is not available. So if you open up Power BI and you do not see that that option is available to you, you can't download it for Microsoft. Your version does not contain a license for it. So this means that this greatly changes the way that these are referenced internally. Oh, by the way, you can't cheat it by copying over from a licensed version to an unlicensed version. It won't work. I extracted this that tells you that all business analytic features are in Office 365 Pro Plus, Professional, Office 2016 Professional Plus, and Excel 2016 Standalone. And I realize it's somewhat confusing, but what you want to do is look at the version that you have. If it is not Pro Plus, Professional, or Office 16, you will not be able to use Power Pivot, which is a really big deal, and I am really sorry that they did this because this is really going to mess people up. So please make sure that when you've got it, you've got the right licenses. You can always use pivot tables, get and transform, Power Query. 3D maps, they're universally available. It's just Power Pivot that is being restricted based on the version that you have. So important to remember. Oh, by the way, the difference is $4 a month. Office 365 standard is 8 and Pro Plus starts at 12. Standalone version, the Office Home and Business is $229 without Power Pivot, and the professional version is $400 with Power Pivot. So there is a cost difference there as well. So if you get upgraded to 2016, make sure you ask, what version is it? Because chances are the person doing the purchasing won't know about the fact that, oh, by the way, Power Pivot won't work. So if you remember nothing else about this presentation and you're looking to go to 2016, remember the Power Pivot may not work with certain versions. All right, so a little bit of a summary. We talked about what was renamed, get and transform, 3D maps. We looked at the visualization and analytic tools that are new and different. Talked about the way you can directly review things to Power BI with their integration. Talked a little bit about Office Online Server and made sure to let you know that Power Pivot and other tools are not available on all versions. So make sure that you've got the right version, otherwise they will not work. So if you have, are there any questions? Anyone come through the chat that I didn't look at? I think I lost my moderator. All right.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out how to unmute. I muted my headset as well as the go-to, and then I had to search diligently to find it. We have a couple comments and a couple questions. First one's a comment. Histogram is better in Excel than Power BI also. More control over intervals. So that was when you were doing some demonstration.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that was one comment. The next one is the new chart types do not work for pivot table for pivot data though is that correct, such as tabular model? So those new chart types, can you use those with the tabular model when you're in Excel doing a pivot table, pivot chart?
Depends on which one. So right. Yes, kind of.
Well, you were mentioning some that didn't work.
Yeah, I will mention the one. I will write that up on my blog to detail which ones will and won't work.
All right. The next one's a comment or question. How do we share Power View reports if the Power Pivot Gallery is going away?
You would do that through the Office online server that is required that you buy in addition to SharePoint.
All right, I was trying to type all that, but good answer. All right.
I do have a blog post about that too.
Oh, good.
So check out my blog and you can see, I do talk about the Power Pivot Gallery going away.
Yeah, so we still have her website up there in the webinar, so you can get that link to her blogs. Another comment, timeline slicer is nice for dates.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah, I love that thing. Next question. So Power View has.
I was just being lazy and just picked the other slicer.
Yeah, I like when they added that in 2013. I think I blogged about that because sometimes you got to have a value on the cube attribute in order for it to work in the
Yeah.
date dimension. So the next question is, so Power View is also excluded from most editions? So when
It
you were,
is excluded the same way that Power Pivot is, yes.
okay. So I think I was directed when you were talking about the features. All right, the next one looks like a comment. The slicer functionality visually indicates items with no data. It causes tabular models to dramatically slow down. Has this been fixed in 2016?
No.
Wow.
I
It's not good.
wish, but no.
All right, now the questions are rolling in. I'm in Home Office 365, so I use Power BI Desktop now at home for Power Pivot functionality. Okay, so that was a comment to
Yeah, I had to give
everybody.
him four. Yeah, I had to give him $4 more because mine didn't work either. So that's how I ran into it. I'm like, what do you mean it's broken? And I found out, no, it's licensing.
All right, next is two questions together. Have you used Office Online Server? Can you speak to how that will work with Excel services going forward?
That is a very long topic because you have to install it as part of SharePoint, and I don't believe it has not been released yet. It's still in preview mode because SharePoint 2016 hasn't been released yet either. So even if, so it is still sort of in flux, but the idea being that you have to load the server as well. So instead of loading the Power Pivot Gallery, you would load the Office Online server instead, which
Okay,
handles loading of all Office applications, not just Excel.
wow. Did very little in SharePoint with Excel services. I do remember installing reporting services in SharePoint and then activating Power View in it, and then Power View came out in Excel. So, what is the official DAX Studio website? Did you talk about DAX Studio?
Oh, yeah, I did talk about DAX Studio. The DAX Studio is
Talking about Marco and them site?
Mark, yeah,
SQL
Mark,
BI.
SQL BI. Thank you.
SQL
Yes, you can
BI.
find it on SQL BI, and it is awesome.
Yeah, they do a lot of neat stuff.
So glad you asked that.
Okay, why do we need Office Online Server if we have OneDrive? Doesn't it do the same thing?
Um, OneDrive handles the information for you. If you're trying to share it through your entire organization, then that's what the online server is supposedly for.
Yeah, that's a sticky topic. I was in a discussion at our local user group about Power BI and OneDrive last night. Last question, is there the ability to group pivot table columns into folders similar to Bid's helper?
Ooh.
Oh, so you know how in Tabular you don't have folders, but Bid's
Yeah,
helper added that. So they're asking, do you have that ability within, I guess, Power Pivot and Excel to
and
group
the
things
answer
in?
is no.
Okay,
It'd be cool,
that's a
but no.
good question. Yeah.
It is a really good question. I mean, it would be a great feature, just not
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
unfortunately.
I never even thought about that. And Excel, I do everything in Tabular and Cube, so that's where I group everything. So, all right, that is the last question. Again, we would like to thank Ginger for taking time out of her schedule. Thank Pragmatic Works too, allowing her to do a talk for the Excel BI VC. Again, this session is recorded in about a day or two. It'll be up on our virtual chapter site. It's a link to a YouTube video, and you can go visit Ginger's site. Remember, let me put that screen up real quick. See, Maine. Remember, there's a business analytics conference coming up in May. Ginger will be there along with a lot of other business analytics type speakers. So if you want, there's a discount code. I did verify that's correct. BAVCEX will be specific to our virtual chapter, and we'll get credit for sending that to you. Again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Ginger. And we can expect Ginger to come back in about 6 months and do another one.
Sure.
We love to have the speakers again and again that do similar stuff. So thank you again, Ginger.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, and we're stopping the recording and ending the session. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.